Welcome to my channel Grow Joyfully. In this 6-part series, I share my knowledge and experience in Bokashi composting in urban context. In the first video, I introduce what Bokashi is and I talk about the Bokashi bin and the Bokashi Bran. Bokashi is a Japanese word, stands for fermented organic material. A little background here I think will help. In Korea, Japan, and many Asian countries, it's a common agricultural practice for many centuries. Farmers deliberately collect and culture naturally occurring soil microorganisms. They apply it to soil. It's supposed to enrich the soil and also minimize the need for application of inorganic soil amendments. So traditional bokashi was typically done outdoors, but how do we do it in a indoor urban context? Around 1982, Dr. Turo Higa, a professor in Japan, succeeded in isolation and culturing of a few specific strains of bacteria. He developed a microbial starter culture which is marketed as EM. EM stands for essential microorganisms. Some people call it as effective microorganisms also. It's a combination of specialized microbes which are non-pathogenic, naturally occurring. They collaborate and they don't compete with each other, and they work when the oxygen level is non-existent or very low. That means they like and they thrive on anaerobic ambience. There are 3 key strains of bacteria in EM. The first one is called as lactobacilli. This is the one that is used to make yogurt and cheese. It converts sugar into lactic acid. The next one is fungi or yeast. Again, you'll be familiar with it if you are making bread, alcohol, etc. The third category is photosynthetic bacteria. They allow other microbes, beneficial microbes, to coexist and to multiply both at root level as well as on the surface of leaves. So while there is a lot of science behind it, if you are familiar with fermenting, pickling of food, brewing wines and beer, etc., you already know these. The entire process of creating compost using bokashi involves 2 stages. The first stage is also called as pre-composting, and this is where the fermentation of organic matter happens in a completely anaerobic environment using the beneficial organisms. After you fill the bokashi bin completely, a minimum of 15 days resting time is required, and the end product is what is called the bokashi pickle. While filling up the bin and also during the resting period, there is excess liquid that comes from the food waste and gets collected at the bottom of the bin. This is called as the bokashi leachate. This needs to be extracted regularly. The second stage involves a very rapid decomposition of the fermented organic matter. This stage is aerobic, and there are many ways to do this. This is all fine, but how do we get started with bokashi successfully in urban indoor context? We need to answer 2 questions. What kind of a bin is required in order to place the kitchen waste in stage 1? And how do we introduce these effective microorganisms in order to get the fermentation done in stage 1? This brings us to the bokashi bin and the bokashi bran. There are 2 important requirements for the container that is used in stage 1 of bokashi. We need a container that is completely airtight in order to facilitate anaerobic fermentation of the organic matter. Also, we need a mechanism to drain off the excess liquid that comes from the fermenting organic matter. This excess liquid is called bokashi leachate. that collects at the bottom of the container, and this needs to be removed periodically. You may purchase ready-made bins which are available in the market, or you can make these bins yourself. Commercially available bins are made with plastic. If you do not wish plastic, you may consider using ceramic or glass containers. There are issues here too. You need to handle them with care, and you have to ensure that they are airtight containers. You may consider using food grade plastic also. If you do a DIY design, it works out pretty economical. When I started Bokashi composting, I bought a few non-branded containers. But then when I scaled up, I realized it's easy to make your own. I simply bought 20-liter paint containers with airtight lids, bought spigots from a hardware shop, and got holes drilled and spigots fixed. For every setup, I have a container with lid and 2 plates kept inside. I did not spend more than rupees 200 for each bucket. This was around 7 years back, and the buckets serve me fine even today. The second design that is used by some people is the double nested container. So you have one container inside another container. So if you have old nested containers in your kitchen, you may reuse the same. The inner container needs to have holes. Hole size and quantity doesn't matter. You just want them to be big enough so that they don't clog easily and they allow for sufficient drainage. And put the bucket with the holes inside the other bucket with no holes in it. The 2 buckets or containers will nest together perfectly, and they leave an air gap at the bottom. That's where the Bokashi leachate can be collected. And the outer container needs to have a airtight lid. Whenever you want to harvest the Bokashi leachate, all you need is remove the upper bucket and take out the tea or the Bokashi leachate from the lower bucket. But I find this a little messy, and I also have this issue of having to lift the inner bucket, especially when it is full of organic material. The Bokashi Bran is any host medium, any carbon-rich matter which is inoculated with beneficial microbes. Once inoculated, this host matter is dried and packaged. The shelf life is quite high, typically more than 1 year. You may buy store-bought Bokashi Bran, or you may make it at home. In Bokashi stage 1, as we add kitchen waste into the Bokashi bin, we sprinkle and we spread the Bokashi Bran. The dormant microbes get activated as they get in touch with the moist food waste. They kickstart the fermentation process. They essentially convert complex proteins into amino acids, that is, complex forms into simpler forms, which plants can take up directly. There are also other byproducts beneficial for soil nutrition. In my next video, I will compare Bokashi with aerobic composting. I'll also discuss the benefits and costs we incur as we practice Bokashi. Thank you for watching my videos. Have a great day.